Where are we up to? Last time we decided that we're not looking for absolute proofs, absolute certainty, infallibility. We're looking for good evidence. Probability. More likely true than the alternatives. Because abstractly, you never have absolute proof, because in practical life, that's all you ever have. The decision to regard the Jewish tradition as true is a practical decision. How shall I live? That's the way practical decisions are made. What I want to do in this session and the two coming sessions is to review for you some of the evidence. We won't even have a chance to review all of it, but we'll review some of it. I just want to crystallize the upshot of yesterday's discussion. When evidence is presented, it is almost irresistible to react. Okay, I hear, I see that this is interesting information, but isn't it still possible that you're wrong? The correct answer to that question is yes, it is still possible that I'm wrong. It is possible. But we're not dealing in possibility. We're dealing in probability. It's possible that you're wrong about your parents. It's possible that you'll be wrong about your marriage choice. It's possible that you'll be wrong about your choice of career. All those things are possible. But we don't live our lives in terms of possibilities. We live our lives in terms of probabilities. So when you feel that itch, but isn't it still possible you're wrong? You can already predict what the answer will be. Yes, you're right, it is possible, but it's not probable. The challenge we would have to consider carefully is someone who would offer evidence against us. Not just thinking up possibilities, which you can do in your armchair with your eyes shut, but displaying real evidence against us. Then we would have to take that seriously and would have to try to respond in some way. But merely thinking up possibilities isn't a serious challenge. Okay, today I want to talk about evidence that the revelation at Sinai is not a myth. That is my particular target. Many people will tell you ancient cultures, ancient nations, and ancient religions had many myths. They created these stories to glorify their ancestors, or to support their traditions, or to solidify their power over the masses, or for whatever reason. And of course we understand that they're not true. They're just myths. Suggestion will be that our story of the revelation at Sinai is also a myth, with whatever explanation you happen to favor. That didn't really take place. What I want to do is give you adequate evidence that it isn't a myth, it isn't just a made-up, created story, but is in fact a record of a real event. In order to do this, I have to lay some groundwork. I'm going to start some distance from the point. It may not even be clear what the connection is, and we'll travel down the road together, hopefully. Number one, almost everything you know because of other people who told it to you. Everything you know about the past, before your birth, population of China, boiling point of lead, the closing Dow Jones Industrials, that we now have 8 planets in the solar system instead of 9 because Pluto got demoted. Almost everything you know because other people told you. A person who would say, I don't believe anything till I check it out myself. I don't believe anything that I haven't checked out and seen myself, is a person who will end up with no world. He certainly won't know who his parents are, nor anything outside of his own experience. No one operates like that. Of course, in surveying the information that's available to us in the world, we don't just take it all blindly. Sometimes the information that's offered isn't correct. People make mistakes, or people lie, We have to become skilled at learning what information to accept and what information not to accept. We'd better be pretty good at this. Because since we rely on other people's information, if we aren't pretty good at it, our lives are going to go haywire. Of course, we're not perfect. We do make mistakes. Sometimes we do get fooled. Or sometimes people just make mistakes and we accept them. We have to revise later. But we better be pretty good at identifying which information is credible and which information is not. How do we do that? How do we decide, how do we come to know which information is credible, is worthy of being believed, even though it's possible that it's wrong, but it's worthy of being believed, and which information is not? We learn it from experience. And here's how we do it. We're getting information from all sorts of sources. Parents, friends, news and information sources, on the net. Now, from time to time, they tell us something about which we have our own personal knowledge. When they tell us something about which we are well informed, we can judge. Is what they say correct, or isn't it correct? Or when they say something about what people whom we know to be reliable people are well informed, and they can tell us how it looks to them. We check the source. We check the source when it delivers information about things that we know. And then we say, well, if it's accurate in the areas that I know, that gives me some reason to trust it in the areas that I don't know. There's a wonderful book called Religions of Man by a fellow named Houston Smith. Now, he writes about all the major world religions. He's a Christian. So when I picked up the book, I first read his chapter on Judaism. It was very good. In fact, it was astonishingly good. I've never read anything by a non-Jew which really captured in what the subject that he addressed, the essence of the Jewish position. I thought, if he's able to do that, then I have reason to trust him with respect to Buddhism or with respect to Hinduism, because Christians typically see Judaism through a Christian lens and get it wrong. And he didn't get it wrong. That demonstrated to me, because I know Judaism inside and out. That way I could judge his information. That's why, for example, if you ever have an occasion to compare the two Times, the New York Times and the London Times, you'll learn the difference in the grade of two newspapers. The London Times is an excellent newspaper. Even the op-ed, the articles are thought out and researched and expressed well and logical and informative. And I won't bother to comment on the New York Times. It's just a tremendous difference of quality. How do I know? Because when they write about philosophical issues or about Jewish issues, or sometimes about mathematical issues, I can tell that one typically makes mistakes or blurs the issues, and the other is much more accurate and much better crafted.
Which one's smarter?
If you have to ask, you don't need to know. London Times is an excellent newspaper. At any rate, this is how it is with respect to the sources of information that you come in contact with, which you come in contact. I don't know if they still have something called Encarta. That was the early Microsoft Encyclopedia Online.
It's been killed.
It's been killed.
By Wikipedia.
Huh?
Wikipedia.
Well, Wikipedia. So they had, for all the languages of the world on Encarta, and if you click on the language, you get a native speaker speaking an expression in that language. So I clicked on Hebrew, and this is what I got. Mi shetarach b'Shabbat yochal b'Shabbat, which means, he who works on Shabbos will eat on Shabbos. Well, that's not exactly how it goes, actually. Actually, the phrase is, Mi shetarach be'erev Shabbat yochal b'Shabbat. He who works on Friday will eat on Shabbos. What happened? They went to Tel Aviv, downtown Tel Aviv. They picked the guy off the street and said, say something Jewish. And he thinks, gosh, what did I learn in third grade? How did it go? Something like this. And he said it out and got it wrong. They didn't bother to check out whether it was correct or wasn't correct. So I said to myself, I know the Hebrew expression. They got it wrong. Should I trust them in Swahili? I don't see why. They're just sloppy. We had a case with the BBC when Sharon first had his stroke and he was in the Hadassah hospital, they reported on the BBC, it was a Saturday night, that ultra-Orthodox Jews came to the building where he was being treated. They were on the street, and they raised their eyes to his hospital room and sang prayers for his recovery. Well, actually, it was the sanctification of the new moon. That's really what it was. And this happens once a month on Saturday night, and I'm sure the Haredi Jews didn't even know that he was there. They were probably there because their wives gave birth there, and they had to stay over Shabbos there, and so on and so on. But the poor reporter from the BBC didn't bother to ask them. Why would you ask them? You're a BBC reporter. You know already what it must be. Right? Well, okay, that told me something about the BBC. You know how careful they are. For this case, I know. So the other cases that I don't know, I judge on the basis of the cases I do know. Same thing true with your parents. Let's take your parents when they describe what you did earlier than you could remember. You overhear your parents telling another relative, when he was 18 months old, he read the newspaper. So you think, gosh, I think I was precocious. Maybe it was black sheep. It wasn't the newspaper. So you say, oh, well, sounds like they're exaggerating. And if they tell over something that happened when you were 3 and you do remember, then you can check against your memory. Are they saying it right or they're not saying it right? So when they give out information that you know from your own self is right or wrong, you can then judge their credibility. And then when they say something which you don't know, you have to ask yourself, how credible are they? Your experience teaches you how credible the source of information is. We'll make the same point again in a slightly more elaborate fashion. 2 witnesses appear in court and they say, we were out at deep sea on a boat with Peter and Paul. Just the 4 of us on the boat. Peter pushed Paul off the boat and Paul was eaten by the sharks. In other words, Peter committed murder. That's what they say. There are no videotapes. There's no physical evidence. The sharks are very thorough. Even his belt buckle is gone. Now, it's true that Paul hasn't made an appearance in the past couple of months, but who knows, but he's hiding in China, That's no proof he's dead. How do we relate to this testimony of the witnesses? Well, we ask certain questions. How old are they? How well educated are they? Are they emotionally stable? Are they addicted to drugs? Do they have any interest in getting Peter in trouble? Will they benefit from getting Peter in trouble? If we get the right answers to those questions, then we may put Peter in jail. Because we have 2 eyewitnesses who say they witnessed a murder. But there are other questions we don't ask. We don't ask whether the witnesses are male or female, whether they're majoring in French literature or music or chemistry, or whether they are right-handed or left-handed, blue-eyed or brown-eyed. How do we know which questions you have to ask and which questions you don't have to ask? Experience teaches us that people who are young often get it wrong. A 9-year-old or 11-year-old or a 12-year-old, especially witnessing a murder, or what looks like a murder, the trauma associated with that, can get the description wrong. A person with a very low intelligence may be unable to express in a clear and accurate way what he saw. A person with emotional disturbance or with drug addiction often makes a bad reporter of the events that took place. A person who has a personal interest in getting Peter in trouble is inclined either to lie or it'll color his perception. He'll see it differently. He won't notice that Paul swung his fist at Peter first. He'll just see that Peter hit Paul and Paul went overboard. So we know from experience certain elements in a witness weaken his credibility. Other elements, like right-handed and left-handedness, blue and brown eyes, don't weaken his credibility. So we know what to ask. If they're 25 years old and they're educated and they have no addictions, no emotional problems, and nothing to gain, then we say their testimony is very credible and we put Peter in jail. Now, how do we know their testimony is credible? What does it mean we say we know it's credible? We know in all the cases where you have witnesses like this, Sometimes we later can determine whether